Cozy up and welcome to this week's episode of the Cub Cast.
So today we've got another guest on the show. We've got Gerry McDade. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi guys. I'm Gerry McDade. I'm your guest on the podcast tonight. I'm looking forward to having a chat with you.
Yeah. So we just have some questions and stuff. So recently you were given the role of PR officer at Martin, right?
Yep.
And previously, before that, you were working hospitality for around a year. And how is the change, like, from going from hospitality to doing the PR relations?
Well, I found in life that certain things lead to certain other things. So in some ways, it's not a natural progression, but in a lot of ways, it is a natural progression. Because when I went into hospitality, one of the first things I argued for was that if we're going to do hospitality properly, if people are going to come in and pay good money to enjoy, the food, a bar service, the game, etc., they need to be entertained. And if they're going to be entertained, then I wanted to do it with, first of all, the king of Capital himself, Andy Ritchie. So Andy came in, the two of us did hospitality. And then I kind of insisted that I wanted to have interaction with players, certainly wanted the manager to come in. So the manager at the time, David Hopkin, was happy to come in. He was a bit reticent at first because he's not, he'll admit himself, very comfortable in front of the camera. But once you get used to the idea, he was great. And through that, of course, you start to work with the players. You start to get to know their names. We did a man of the match. I'd have two of the players up at the end of the match for a Q&A. So you get to know the guys a wee bit better.
Yeah.
So that was going really, really well.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we went to lockdown and it was all kind of brought to a halt. But I was still helping out in certain aspects with the club, players, management, etc. And there were certain things going on that I felt would benefit from a wee bit more PR because I've got a lot of media experience. And it really just kind of went from there. I had discussions with people. And then the chief exec at that time, Dave McKinnon, asked me if I'd be interested in taking on a part-time PR role, which I said I would consider. I mean, the more I thought about it, I thought, yeah, okay, let's do it. So I really, really enjoy it. The kicks for me are getting to work with a great bunch of lads, great playing squad. They're all buy into each other, and I don't think there's anything I've ever asked them to do, from Christmas messages, birthday messages, interviews. We've been doing a weekly update now for about a year. Where we get the manager or we'd get a player in. So there was a lot of things that I've enjoyed working with the new interim manager, of course, Anton McElhone as well. Built up a relationship with him. So it's been very, very rewarding thus far. Very enjoyable.
Yeah. There must be quite a lot that's involved with PR and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Also, we were pretty sure you were previously a hairdresser, right?
No, I'm still a hairdresser.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Did you have any interesting experiences doing it, or any weird people you might have met, or stuff like that?
I cut a few famous people. Did
Really?
Andy Gorham, Rangers goalkeeper, yeah. Balanced it out by cutting Paul McStay, Celtic player's hair. I did his hair as well. A few other people as well. But yeah, with a lot of interesting experiences. Some I can talk about in camera and some I can't. But I've been I started hairdressing in 1982.
Oh.
So that's what coming up and yep, I know I don't look that old, guys, but I really am, to be fair, right? So that's coming up now, maybe on 39 years, and thoroughly enjoyed it. It's always been a great thing and I've always kept in it. I had a 2-year period when I left and went to work full-time at Celtic Football Club. And that was good. I did media for them, but I missed the feeling of being self-employed. I've been my own boss.
Yeah.
So I didn't really like being told what to do and what not to do. So I discovered when I went away full-time that I'm unemployable now. I have to be self-employed. I have to be doing my own thing. So the self-employment's come about as well through the hairdressing, which has allowed me to do all the other stuff I do.
Yeah.
So I'm still a hairdresser. Not at the moment because we're in lockdown, but hopefully, sometime in the very not too distant future that we get back to that. So, but I can balance it. I balance it with all the other stuff that I do.
100%. So you are obviously a giant Elvis fan, kind of like my dad. What got you
The man.
into what got you into music and that specific, rock and roll music?
Always loved music. Always loved music. And when I was a young boy, Elvis was just God. I was born in 1964, and Elvis was well on the go by that point. But getting into the early sort of 70s, I was listening to a lot of the contemporary stuff. I loved a lot of the stuff that was in the charts. And then I heard Jailhouse Rock from Elvis Presley, and it was like something from another planet. And you know what it's like, guys, when you find something like that, when you find a singer and a song, you want to find more.
Yeah.
And the more I researched about this guy Elvis, and then all his movies were on television.
Yeah.
So you looked at him and you thought, he's everything you want to be. He's a brilliant singer. He looks fantastic. The chicks absolutely dig him. What's not to want to be about Elvis Presley? But fundamentally, it was always the music for me. I've always everything. I mean, I know people will say, "Oh, the movies," but everything from the 50s right through to the weeks before he died, got it all. Get right into it. It's a funny story because I was in Ireland on holiday in August 1977, and I was staying at my cousin's house, and they had a whole batch of old movie magazines, and I was sitting reading the magazine this particular night, and of course as soon as I saw Elvis I thought, right, great. And it was about him turning 40 and how fed up he was. It was a lot of rubbish,
Yeah.
And I thought, no, he's still the king. And then when I woke up the next morning, my brother came into the room to tell me that Elvis had died the night before, and it was just unbelievable. I couldn't, he was only, I suppose he was only 42, but even, stupidly enough for me at that age, I was about 12, so you think, well, 42 is a bit of an innings for a pop singer, and it's nothing at all, But I've just always loved his music. I love other stuff. I mean, I'm nuts on the Beatles as well. I mean, chapter and verse on them, everything they've ever done, read all the books. But Elvis is the old numero uno for me, always will be.
Did you ever consider going to see him? Obviously he didn't do the UK, but were you ever like, if he does, I'm definitely going? When he was alive?
Yeah, too young, really. I mean, you always hoped he would come to Britain, even at that age. I couldn't believe that he'd never been to Britain, of course. But the only time he has been in Britain, he was in Scotland.
Yeah,
when he landed at Prestwick Airport. Of course, because Dave's told you all this. He's indoctrinated you with it. But I mean, I always thought, when I got older, I would go and see him in Vegas or something, or wherever he was. But guys, see, back in the 1970s, see if you're living in places like Greenock, America was like, it's like Mars. It was that far away. People it's not like now where, air flight was cheap and all that. I know people that did go to see Elvis, and they saved up for about 2 years. And these were guys that were in good jobs, but it was the whole experience. You had to go to America to see him. You had to go to the concerts, and it seemed so remote that you could ever go. But you always had it in the back of your mind that, definitely when I get a bit older, I would always want to go and see him. But then, as I say, I was 12 when he died.
Yeah, I would still be interested in going to Graceland and stuff. I mean, my name is on that wall 5 times.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah, including my cat's name. My auntie thought it was a good idea to put my cat's name on Elvis's wall.
What was the cat called?
Pepsi.
All right, well, that's cool. Elvis liked Pepsi. Drank a lot of it. I've been to Graceland 3 times. I had my 40th birthday there as well, which was good. Really cool. They let me open a bottle of champagne and on the porch at Graceland, and myself and my wife were there, and all these Americans. This is the great thing about America, that I'm sitting on a bus, because what you do is you get the bus on the other side of the highway. It takes you across and up. You kind of just walk up to the house, and I'm sitting there with a bottle of champagne and a birthday cake, and of course this American guy says, "What's the story?" And I said, "Well, it's my 40th birthday." And so of course nothing would do, but they wanted to sing happy birthday to me. So I'm standing, I've got it recorded somewhere on audio, where I'm standing, they're singing happy birthday to me. Complete stranger, they don't even know who I am. And blow out my candles, open my champagne, and get a round of applause. And I remember thinking, this is the great thing about America. If some American was stoating about Edinburgh Castle with a birthday cake and a bottle of champagne, everybody looking at him going, check out Egypt, what's here. But out there, no, they want to be part of it. They want to be part of your one-off experience, And it made it extra special. But being at Elvis's house in my 40th, that was great.
I mean, personally, I would never like to live in America, but the experience is always something that's great to see. But
I think it'd be a hard place to live now, to be honest. But back in the day, it was. But when I grew up in the 70s, everybody's dream was to go to America and see it. It always was. It just, I think that's more a kind of Scottish-Irish thing. Yeah. I think because the Scots and the Irish had so many people that went to America that you feel part of you's over there. And they had everything. I mean, they had 45 channels on their television when we had 3.
Yeah.
Everything was in colour. The television was better. The movies were better. It just seemed, apart from that period when the Beatles, etc., and for about 10 years or so, the music was better over here, but it was the place you wanted to go.
Yeah, I mean, you had the Rolling Stones and stuff as well, I guess. But I think living in America now would some places in America would be a lot cheaper than living in London or something. Because 100%. Because London's really expensive.
Yeah, London's priced itself out of the market, I think. I mean, I don't know how young people growing up. I mean, I wrote a book a few years ago, a former footballer, and the deal was with a publishing company down in London, and we went down to meet them. And this guy played for Ireland. And there was a lot of Irish girls working at the publishing house. These are young lasses, and right in the heart of London. And I'm saying to them, how can you afford to live here? And the truth of the matter is, there's sort of 6 of them sharing, a 4-bedroom flat somewhere in Camden Town and paying something like £200 a week each just to be there. Yeah. So I don't know how people, people are moving out of London to live because it's just too expensive to be there. It's a cracking city. I mean, I love it. I wouldn't live there, but I love getting down. I get down as much as I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Obviously being a PR officer, a lot of what you do is untold and stuff. Did you also have any interesting experiences of doing it or something that's very memorable?
In terms of PR?
Yeah,
wow.
Doing your job.
Not so far, because the PR's become a fairly new thing in my life. I've done media work for 20 years maybe, in various capacities, writing comedy sketches and presenting stuff and doing all sorts of stuff. PR's come new to me. I've seen a lot of PR. I've seen a lot of the work that particularly people that I've worked with do. So there's yet to be a really big experience, I would imagine, that's happened. The great thing is when you get the guys buying into what you want to do. Yeah. So because up until about a year ago, Morton didn't really have a big media presence in terms of interviews with players, interviews with managers.
Yeah.
Loads of things. That we've got a goal of the month competition. We've got we did Christmas messages. We now have goal celebrations on Twitter. So if Calvin Orsi scores a goal, there's a tremendous action shot of him with a fire extinguisher that goes up on Twitter. So the fruition of seeing all these ideas that you have and that other people contribute to and making that real, making it happen, that's been the really rewarding experience for me.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's obviously from what it seems like you've done a lot of different career paths, but obviously that sounds like it's an interesting job, to say the least.
Yeah, I wear a lot of hats, Thomas. That's what I've done. The first sort of 20 years, it was all hairdressing. I devoted myself to that and get into it. Really, really enjoyed it. Built up, I like things a fairly successful business. But I'd always wanted to do other things. I'd always wanted to write, so I started writing. I started writing comedy sketches for Radio Scotland's Off the Ball. That's how I really started. And that led me into other things, like writing videos for like the Celtic Football Club, or ended up doing stand-up comedy for 10 years because I was writing stuff, it was getting performed and I liked it, but it didn't sound the way I wanted it to sound. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And somebody said to me, well, why don't you do it then? Why didn't you start doing stand-up yourself? And I thought, give that a crack. Loved it, really enjoyed that. I was 10 years part-time, mostly Central Belt Scotland. I didn't really travel. I wasn't in it to go all the way down to Middlesbrough on a Tuesday night in February. to do half an hour, but I enjoyed what I did do. And these things lead you into different areas of your life. And I've always thought, you only get one shot at this gig. So why don't you try things? Some things come off great, some things don't come off. You always learn from the experience. There's never anything you do that you won't learn for. So you've got to kind of be philosophical about it and say, well, that didn't work. But at the end of the day, I learned this and I learned that and I met him, and that's the way my life is.
Yeah. So as you mentioned there, you're an author as well as like a freelance scriptwriter.
Yeah.
Every author kind of goes their own way about writing stuff and their thought process and stuff. Like, how do you go about like writing your books and your scripts?
Depends on the remit for it. What I'd really like to do is I'd love to write something fictional, and I've been working on something fictional for quite a while. But the truth of the matter is, you need to build up a reputation with publishers, by and large. Yeah. And in order to do that, then you need to write and get your name on books. So the last book I wrote was the Irish guy I was telling you about was Packy Bonner, who played for Celtic in the Republic of Ireland. I'm working on one just now for a former player as well, which I can't tell you about because that's not out. I've also been, the last 3 or 4 years, I've been working with a guy who played for, I'll not tell you who it is, but people can maybe guess. He played for Aberdeen, Spurs and Barcelona in Scotland. I've been working with him, trying to bring his book to fruition as well. So the concept of those books is that you want to hear the voice of the person that you're writing for. Now, the biggest compliment I received for Big Pack Bonner's book was any number of people would say to me, I heard his voice when I read it, and I thought, well, that's what I want to do. I want to write a book that people can relate to. Most football autobiographies are pretty boring, to be honest. The following Saturday we were at home to Dundee United and there was an injury and all, and you're like, yeah, you know that, but what you want to do is you want to find out what makes people tick. How did they feel in a certain situation, and it's stuff like that really commits to me. I've had a couple offers to write other stuff, but I kind of turned them down because I thought it's not what I want to be. Ultimately, what I want to do is to write a fictional book, and to do that, then I'm just making my name with publishers, so that what happens is if you have a manuscript, you can eventually go to a publisher and say, look, this is what I want to do, and I've written these books. I mean, Big Packy's book was nominated for an Irish Sport Award, so we went along to that. We didn't win it, but you're nominated, so you're a nominated writer. So all of these things go on your CV, But humour's my thing. That's, obviously writing comedy, doing comedy, all that sort of stuff, doing the hospitality, all that sort of stuff. That's my bag. So I'd like to write something that's got a bit of humour in it. I'd like to write something that people read and have a laugh at, So that's ultimately my goal. I say I'm probably halfway through something like that, but I know I can't really get it published until I've got this a wee bit more of a CV, if you like, that people can go for. But my starting point is always, I suppose, comedy, tongue-in-cheek stuff. Rather than
true to what you like.
Yeah, I can't write anything personal. Yeah. I'm not a confessional writer. I'm not somebody that's comfortable talking about, like most guys, talking about my feelings or anything like that. I don't think I could write something that would be as passionate as that. But I do like stuff that's humour, even if you have sad moments that you can write about. I've had the honour and the privilege to do a couple of eulogies for friends that I lost, and that was a different kind of writing, But even then, you wanted to put some humour in because that's what they were like. So even from the standpoint of trying to write something serious like that, fine. But I don't think I'd ever be able to write something that really conveys my feelings. I think I'm a Scorpion, and Scorpions don't like their feelings laid out. They don't want people to know things about them, sort of thing. Not there's anything to know about me, but you know what I mean. It's some writers write from the heart, real passionate stuff, and you're like, wow, I could never write like that.
Yeah. I mean, working with like footballers so close to write books about them, like how must it be, you have to write a book about someone, like are you not always like stressing about if you get something wrong that they don't like? stuff like that. Like, how do you really get into their mindset and think about how you're going to write a book about them that will go public?
That's a really good question, Aaron, because the guy I'm writing for just now, you know, it was really important, as it has been important with me with these sort of books, is that they buy into how I write, how I want to write.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd always said that I'm not a journalist. Not that's to decry journalists, but I'm a book writer. I write books, and therefore it's a different style. It's a different format. Yes, you have to get into somebody's head and find out a wee bit more about them. Crucially, you've got to build a relationship of trust up with them, because you're writing about their life and you have to respect that at all times. But yeah, from talking to people, and I tell you, I think this is maybe where the hairdressing come into it. You know, if you've been hairdressing for 30 years, one of the first things you've got to do is read people. You know, be able to work out what goes through their mind, what they're like. Otherwise, you can't give them the hairstyle that would suit them. So I became quite skilled at people watching and understanding people, and from talking to them, getting an understanding of what was in their head and what they were like. And I've managed to do that reasonably well with these guys, as I say that. But from that perspective, yeah, it's not just about the games and all this sort of stuff. There has to be that. Nobody wants to read a football book who doesn't talk about football. But at the same time, you want to say, well, what was going through your mind when that was happening? Were you angry about it? Were you know, what I like to do is maybe change people's perceptions. The guy I'm writing about just now, there'll be a perception of what he's like. Nobody, you know, they don't really know him. And I like to change that. I said, well, actually, this is what he did and this is what he thought. And if you can, people that go, well, I wouldn't have thought that of him, then that's a major coup for me to be able to put that on paper.
Get to know them better and try and imagine for the reader like how the person actually is, rather just their life and like football.
Yeah, definitely. I usually get people just, you know, a friend or so that maybe proofread it for me, and he'll check the facts, because I'm pretty anal about facts. You know, well, you said that goal was in the 67th minute, and it wasn't actually. It was 10 minutes before that. You know, stuff like that is important to me. You know, because you'll always get people, and I'm one of them. You know, I mean, I went round. I did go around Graceland with my wife, and you listen to the history on headsets, and they tell you things. And I would stop the tape and say to my wife, "They've got that wrong. That wasn't in 1966. That was 1964." And she's like, "For God's sake, what does that matter? It matters to me." You know. So I'm a wee bit like that. So yeah, I always try as best I can. You're not always going to get it right, but you try and check and double check. So spellings and names are important. Details. The details are important, because people do pick up on these things.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so like you've also doing obviously a lot of career paths and stuff like that. You've travelled to many places. Is there any place that like you'd like to go back to, or you really think it was important to you?
Paris. Love Paris. I loved Paris. In fact, my wife and I were talking about it the weekend there. I haven't been to Paris for about 20 years. I'd love to go back there. A city's got a vibe, yeah. Every city you go to get a different vibe. I loved Rome. I thought the idea of, I knew a girl that worked in Rome, and the idea of getting up in the morning, you know, going to work through all this history that's thousands of years old must be tremendous. But Paris has got a real vibe about it that I really, really like. It's just one of those places I kind of feel at home in it, to be honest. Because I'm not French, you know.
Yeah, they have nice food.
But yeah, it's just a place that I think is great. Memphis, of course, you know, it's to be around that, you know. But I think the thing is, I think if I lived in Memphis, I think it would spoil it for me. I like to know that it's out there and then you can access it when you want. Myself and a group of my friends, we were at school together. We'll all be celebrating a big birthday in about 3 years' time. And I come up with the idea that we should all go to Tennessee. And we're all going, you know, hopefully, touch wood. Hopefully the pandemic will be over then. But that's the plan, is to go over, and we'll all enjoy it together, because we're big buds and we get back a long way. But I prefer the idea of having Memphis there that you could go to. But I could probably live in Paris, actually, to be honest. If I've got the opportunity, I would live in Paris. It's a cracking city. I really love it.
Yeah. Personally, for me, there's been a lot of places that I've been that I've loved, but like for me, it's always great to visit, but home will obviously be where I live. And personally, that's just how I love visiting places. I love going places that feel like home, but personally, this is the only home I can ever have. That's all.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a home bird as well, I have to say. I do like getting home. I think it's always something about me that even when I was on holiday, when I was a child, or even in the last few years, I like a holiday, but I like to go home as well. You know, Ireland's a bit. It's another place as well. I've got a lot of family over there. My roots are there. So we used to go to Donegal a lot when I was a teenager, and every time I get back there, it feels special, and it actually feels like, in a sense, like home as well. Because there's so many of my people over there, and again, it's a vibe. You know, they're very, very well. You know this, Aaron, but they're very, very laid back. The Irish in general, and no more laid back than Donegal. It's just a horizontal place where everything is like, you know, what's your hurry? Take your time. Tomorrow's another day. All that sort of stuff that I could buy into. If I had my choice, I'd have a holiday home over there. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places that you'd go on holiday and you'd be like, you know, I really like this as a vacation, but you wouldn't want to stay there, you know?
Yeah.
Even just visiting places.
Yeah, I would agree with
you. Over years of doing like literally everything you do, does it ever get boring? Like everything combined, does it ever really get boring?
No.
Not at all.
Too much enjoyment out of it, to be honest. Having said that, there was a period last year in lockdown. You know, in my entire career, I've never experienced 4 months of not working. You know, I've been fortunate that way. I've always had work. I've always had a job, and not everybody can say that. And about halfway through the lockdown last year, I was starting to kind of enjoy the fact that I didn't have much on, because normally, you know, I'd nights with former footballers to do, and they were all cancelled, and everything just shut down. And at first I was like, God, you know. But actually about halfway through, I started to think, and I said to my wife one day, I said, you know, see if this is what retirement's like. And it'll be a long time before I can do that. This is what retirement's like. You know, bring it on. So maybe I would adjust to that better. But no, I never get bored. You know, I've always, if I feel I'm asked to do something, a project or something, and I'm not really buying into it, then I'm pretty honest now with people. You know, once upon a time, you would do it for the sake of doing it. But see if your heart's not in it, there's not much point, you know. And I've had a couple of things, I've just, more than a couple that I've just said, nah, that's not really my thing. I'm not going to do it, you know. But it's important to keep yourself motivated and interested. And no, I don't really never really get bored with what I'm doing. Everything's different, you know. I've always said I'm never more a hairdresser than when I'm doing other things, and then I'm never more other things than when I'm doing hairdressing. So it's a nice combination.
I mean, yeah, it sort of makes sense. Like, I think for everyone at the start of lockdown, it was a big shock, and like this is because people like us over this year, obviously, might before. Never really happened for us before, so it was a big initial shock, and then I think slowly people started to settle down and like figure out that sometimes it might be good for them, you know, just have a little bit relaxed in the world.
Is this why you guys started a podcast then?
I mean, lockdown definitely helped. We kind of met over lockdown, right? We met through a game, and then we just, you know, became friendly.
Was it Fortnite?
It was Fortnite.
I don't even know what that is, guys. I've just heard Fortnite. All the young guys are into it, you know. So.
I mean, yeah, I'd say lockdown was quite a big reason for us to do it, because we had a lot of extra time on our hands, and a podcast is something that, for me and Aaron, is just something very fun to do.
Yeah, and you know, you get a ton of people over lockdown because they're all in home, you know. So it definitely brings a lot more opportunities that we wouldn't have.
That's my point exactly. That everything I've ever done has led to something else. Yeah. Because you meet somebody, and if you hadn't had lockdown, if you didn't have Fortnite, then, you know, you guys wouldn't be sitting here tonight talking to me. You know, and likewise. So, and you know, my feeling is you guys will take this further, and you'll develop this, and this is something that you'll go into. You know, and who knows, maybe 50 years' time, you guys will be going to Tennessee with your mates for your birthday.
Yeah, I mean, it does lead to a lot more doors that have been opened and like
Yeah, 100%.
starting things, and then that leads to more things.
Mhm.
I mean,
Good.
Everything's connected. Really.
but yeah, obviously, going back to your writing a little bit, like writing for BBC Scotland and like lots of other different things. Does like the type of writing change between companies? Obviously, like humor writing, like being like formal writing. Does it sort of change your intent, or is it still like the same thing throughout?
Everything's got a variation to it, Thomas. It's certainly when I first started writing for Off the Ball, the way it worked was on a Thursday, you would be given an email telling you, if you hadn't noticed, these were the things that happened in Scottish football this week. If you like, you could mix it with politics. I mean, there was a period I wrote gags about George W. Bush every week, and every week they were getting on, because the guy that did the impressions was brilliant at them and wanted to do it. So you had a brief and you had to fulfill that remit, and that's good discipline. You had to write the gags. They had to be in by, I think it was 6 o'clock on the Friday night for consideration. No, sorry, 8 o'clock on the Friday morning, because they filmed it in the morning. So things like that were, you're working to a deadline. So same when you're writing books as well. I actually have found that I work better to a deadline on everything. Anytime I've had to write speeches or presentations, if I've got 6 weeks to think about it, then you maybe get a wee idea now and again, you go and write it down, but there's an adrenaline surge about having to meet a deadline.
Yeah.
I think the adrenaline surge makes your brain go into different areas and you start to think about different things, and that's how it all comes together. But I'm not, I'm pretty meticulous about, my belief is the old saying that if you fail to...
The part about having a deadline, I find that's actually helps a lot as well, because like my motivation will sort of be like lackluster if I say I'm doing schoolwork and you sort of you have like 2 weeks to do it. If I have like a few days to do it, I'll get round to it and I'll perform to a better standard personally.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Maths. Maths. They wouldn't let me sit maths in 5th year, and then when I sat it in 6th year, I realised why they wouldn't let me sit it in 5th year. Horrendous, I get asked 2 or 3 years ago to go down and speak to students, 5th, 6th year students, starting their first day of their new timetable. And the school phoned me up because I was a former pupil, and I came down and do it, and I went and met the guy who was organising it. I said, look, if you expect a guy to come down here and say, I worked really hard, I got all the results, blah, 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 and I'm not your guy, because I didn't do that. I was pretty lazy. Nowhere, I didn't do anywhere near as well as I should have done at school. But there were other things, rock and roll, football. So there was always something else that would keep me back from maybe studying the way I should have. I said, if you want a guy to come down and say to the students, that this is how I did it, then I'm your man. But that's kind of the way it was with me at school. Particularly the further I went into high school, the more I just seemed to. I mean, I'm right up to 6th year, and I loved it. I mean, I had a great social life, but I wasn't studying as much as I should have done, and therefore didn't get the results that I maybe should have got because I was probably quite lazy. So it's probably an interesting thing about me that when I look back at that and think I was quite lazy, to think now how much I push myself to get things done, and I don't like laziness, But you live and learn.
Yeah, I mean, after reading some of the articles you've wrote, you really look out for professionalism in people, and football players, and just people you interview in general. And who was your favourite interview with, if you have one?
Ooh, that's another good question. I'm not sure I could answer that, to be honest.
Even just like one that you really enjoyed,
I'd really need to think about it because I've enjoyed so many. I've really enjoyed. I've been working with Gordon Strachan the last couple of years, and he's hilarious. He's absolutely hilarious. And again, working with Andy Ritchie, because that was one of the things that I got Andy Ritchie down to Inverkip a couple of years ago. I didn't know Andy that well. I only had a phone number, and the guys in Inverkip had asked me if I would do a night and who could I do it with. And I said, well, why don't we try and get Andy? He's a local legend. thoroughly enjoyed that. He interviewing Big Andy because his career's been. He was a god down here. He still is. I mean, you could through Greenock with him. He was that good a footballer, you know. Should have been cap of Scotland and wasn't. But he's got some sad stuff about his story as well. And there was a point, I think, in the interview that he actually kind of broke down a wee bit, you know, which really touched me and it touched the audience. And I thought, you know, this is a great interview because see when you get someone like that who's not afraid to open up, because you tend to find it in former players now rather than the modern players don't open up because they're young guys and they've not had the life experience. Yeah. But when you get somebody like Andy Ritchie, where you sit down and he's warts and all, he'll give you the whole story. He's thoroughly honest about some of the daft stuff that he did that you know, that didn't work for him. And just to have someone like that, I like doing people like that. I don't like people doing. I don't like people that are too modest, but at the same time, I don't like people that just want to talk about themselves all the time. In a sense, and I've worked with people like that you know, if you listen to them, you think they'd invented football when they didn't. Yeah. You know, but in that respect, I think Andy Ritchie's probably one of my favourite interviews, and it's not really like an interview; it's like a chat. Yeah. Because the best interviews should be like that, in my opinion. Yeah. You know, there are certain, you know, I've watched people interview. If somebody interviewed the Morton manager a few weeks ago on the BBC, and it was all kind of written down on a phone, and I thought, what? Have a chat with the guy. You know, you shouldn't look at your notes like that. You know, just talk to him. You know, and I think those are the best kind of interviews, because if people feel they're being interrogated in an interview, they'll just close up. Yeah. You know, they need to warm to you, they need to trust you. And the best way to do that is to use your personality to have a chat with them, and you'll find they'll open up. And again, I was surprised at some of the areas that Andy Ritchie took us into that night. I wasn't expecting it, and the audience certainly weren't expecting it. And I think that goes down as one of my all-time favourites, to be honest. Yeah.
I mean, we try to keep it like kind of formal, but keeping it like nice and calm and chill, you know, when talking to someone, not making it like too scripted or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you guys, it certainly works, because I'm enjoying the conversation we're having, because it's a chat. You know, the questions are good, you know, but it's a chat. You know, we're having an exchange of views and opinions, and those are the best kind of interviews. I think they're certainly that's the kind of interview I want to watch, rather than question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, it does definitely help when you have a good, obviously, respect for the person you're speaking to, but a good connection, like you sort of flow back and forth from each other really well.
Yeah.
Like with interviewing as well, if you're finding more of a chat than an interview, then you'll enjoy it more and then bring the best part of yourself.
How much research do you guys do on people that you're speaking to?
It really depends on who they are, what they do, type thing.
And like if we've met them before or we know about them a lot of things, then we'll sort of just write down a few things extra, or we'll just go into it just blind, basically. Just have a good time.
Good. Yeah, as I said, guys, fail to prepare to fail. It's so true. I mean, it's like all cliches are true, and that's definitely one. That's my kind of mantra. I don't like getting into something I'm not prepared for. You know. And sometimes you can't avoid that in life, and you have to wing it. But I worked with comedians that I admired. I worked with that, you know, they didn't see me have an act. One guy would turn up 5 minutes before he went on stage. You think, how do you get into that zone? But bang, you go and knock it out of the park, audience in stitches, and I admired that. But I couldn't do that. You know, I need to, whenever I went to a gig, because I'm through the likes of Edinburgh, Falkirk, and these places, the drive was a great thing, because I would get through the act, go through the routine. How was it going to be? You know, there'd always be a curveball from the audience, but that was fine, because I liked working. That's why I ended up doing hospitality, because I liked working with an audience.
Yeah.
But I knew that there are guys I worked with that said, "Well, I don't know what I'm going to say when I go on stage." Jeez, what was? I'd be terrified of that. I would, you know. So.
I mean, same. If like you were doing something as big as that, like going on stage without like just getting there, I mean, some people can do that, like you said, but for me personally, I won't be able to do that either.
Yeah, I
No.
think it depends on your confidence level, you know. And it's
Yeah.
the same with like when you're interviewing people. If you're like, you know, I feel like I'd really relate to this person, you can be less structured. It really just depends on who it is, doesn't it? And
Yeah,
what
it
it,
totally
what you're
does.
doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally does. Because some people, I'm trying to think. I don't think I've ever really had a bad interview. Some people, footballers in particular, can be 6 or 7 second answers to questions, you know, when you want them to talk.
Yeah.
But that's just how it is, you know.
Yeah.
But no, by and large, I pretty much enjoyed everyone I've interviewed, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's obviously a great thing, because if you don't enjoy what you're doing or who you're speaking to, then it's not good. Like I said before, it's not going to be as good for the actual person watching it as well.
Yeah, you're right.
It really shows. But also talking about like commercial, like voiceovers as well. Is there like anything?
You have done your research, haven't you?
Yeah, like you say, you have to be prepared.
Yeah.
But on the show before, we've had a person called Piotr Michael. He does like voice acting in Call of Duty and like other games and stuff like that.
All right, okay.
We love voice acting, like voiceovers and stuff like that. Is there what sort of like stood out to you for the reason you wanted to do it, or like why was it enjoyable to you, basically?
Yeah. And
No,
voice.
to be honest, because it's not as if I'm an actor. I've never acted in anything, you know. But how did I get into voiceover? That's a good question. Again, it just seemed to happen. I think I'd done a couple of things, and then somebody said, "Well, why don't you record a show reel and then send it off to?" You don't send it to ad agencies; you send it to studios who record. And then what happens is, so and so Halifax Bank come looking, and they say, "We're looking for a guy west of Scotland, certain age, certain sound," and they'll say, "Well, look, we've got about 10 guys here," and they get through and they pick, and that's how I ended up kind of doing it. You know, I really enjoyed it though. Really enjoyed it.
I mean, Piotr brought up that getting into voice acting is really hard. We asked him like how he got into it. He said sometimes you'd land like 1 in 100 voice acting auditions and stuff. So it must be pretty hard to go into that, you know, blindly almost for your first time.
Yeah, I mean, I never ever saw it as a career. You know, I just, again, it was just another strand.
Something else
that,
to do.
That I quite enjoyed when I did it. There are people, obviously, and I can't, off the top of my head, you guys will know better than me, but, you know, you're an established actor, you're an established comedian, or you're on the television, and therefore your voice is worth something. So they'll pay top dollar for so-and-so to do an advert. I was doing radio adverts for local radio. That went out over on the commercial stations. I just quite enjoyed it. You went in, you'd drive through all the way. You drive through to Lothian, right, or through to Leith, studio through there. That would take about an hour and 20 minutes, and park the car, and you've been in and out in half an hour tops.
Yeah,
because they're ready to go. They've got this. You know, you were never doing an advert that was more than 45 seconds. So you would get around through it. If you liked it, it was good. I did build a wee bit of a reputation for being a one-take guy. At one point, you know, that you'd rehearse it a couple of times and then bang, if you nailed it, it was good. And time's money with these guys, you know, so the longer you're there, the more they're having to pay for studio time and things. So so that was quite a good thing. But again, just like anything else I've ever done, I can't remember how I got into voiceover. It just seemed to happen. Somebody contacted me about it, and I kind of said, right, okay, give it a shot, you know. And it was good. You get a kick out of it, and it, you know, you get a text message from somebody saying, "I've just been down the road and I heard your voice advertising prostate cancer checks and things." So that's what I did. So it was a bit bizarre, you know, but
I mean, sometimes like the things that you don't know about is becoming the best experiences.
Yeah, they do. I'll tell you one thing I was told right at the outset. You know, if they want a Sean Connery voice, they get Sean Connery. So don't bother trying to be an actor and do different things. They're only booking your voice. They're not going to book your voice to do impressions of people. Yeah. So and one of the reasons I did get gigs more than other people who maybe were better suited in the fact that they were actors was that they were actors, and they would act rather than than just do the voiceover.
So you've done a lot and met a lot of people. Is there anyone who kind of left a giant influence on you when it comes to just in general? People who you've met, maybe celebrities.
These are tough questions, guys. I'm not sure again that I could really. I'm trying to think of anyone that I've met that. Nah, I mean everybody leaves you with something. You know, you take something from everybody that you kind of come across. You know, a lot of my influences were people like the first guy I worked for in hairdressing was a big influence. You know, he's my boss, but I watched the way he dealt with people, and I learned a lot from him. And I learned a lot about business from him, and he was a huge influence. You know, but you take influences from all over. You know, from people that you meet. You know, I'm always aware sometimes when you're interviewing like a goalkeeper or something, because I was a goalkeeper. I wasn't very good at that either, to be honest, but I did that. That's where I played. So I'm always interested when I'm interviewing goalkeepers to ask how they get into it. Yeah. You know, so you take away something from everybody that you learn from. I don't think there's been one person that I would really say that I've interviewed, or everyone you work with has been good. I've probably learned a lot from Big Packy Bonner writing his book, getting to know him as the guy that he is, and he left a big impression on me as well. You know, decent big guy, everything that everybody says he was. I mean, going round, we went over to Dublin to launch his book, and going round Dublin with him was like going about Nazareth, the Jesus. You know, everybody was, he's the man. Oh my God, you know. And I don't think we put our hands in our pockets for 2 days. Maybe we just kept back drinks and things, you know. But you learn from people about how they conduct themselves in life, particularly how they conduct themselves in the face of such public scrutiny. What I have learned about footballers in particular, you know, and this was certainly true of a lot of the guys I've worked with, their default position is always not to trust somebody, because they always think, you know, George Best used to say that he didn't mind people stopping for autographs and all this sort of stuff, but he hated when he was in a restaurant. If somebody came up for an autograph, he would do it. But he hated being in a restaurant and somebody would go past and maybe slap him in the back and say, "How are you, George?" Because he felt as if he was being used a wee bit. That this guy was trying to impress his girlfriend by saying that he knew George Best and things. And I think how you conduct yourself in front of people. So I think everyone, in terms of like football, rock and roll, any kind of form of celebrity, if you like, their first instinct is, what does this guy want from me? You know, when he's coming up and saying hello. So you've got to break down those barriers and win somebody's trust if you're going to write about them. And that's very much a part of it. So to watch how some of these people deal with that aspect of their life, the very public life, I find that quite interesting, to be honest.
So, like, speaking of celebrities, did you ever really stumble into any, like, big celebrities, like maybe singers, actors, just while you were out and about, maybe doing your thing? Any that kind of stand out?
Wish you'd given me these questions before. God, who have I met that I stumbled into? Again, I can't really think. You know, guys that, I mean, like goalkeepers. I was a goalkeepers guy, right? I grew up with all the legendary goalkeepers. I loved them all. And I met a guy, Celtic were playing down at Sunderland a few years ago, and I was asked to go down and do commentary for it. And there's a guy down there called Jim Montgomery, who was a goalkeeper who played in the 1973. I'm born you with this, guys. 73 FA Cup final. Sunderland beat Leeds. Sunderland in the second division. Leeds were the biggest team in the country. And a lot of it was down to this guy. And he'd always been up there for me. And I was down at Sunderland working, and I noticed they had a lounge named after him. And I was speaking to one of the guys. I said, "Does he come in?" "Oh, he comes into all the matches." I said, "All right. Is he in today?" And they were like, "Oh, yeah, he's upstairs, you know." So I was like, he says, do you want to meet him? I thought, Jesus, Jim Montgomery, you know. So down he comes, you know. Couldn't have been nicer. Shook my hand, took a photograph, you know. And I'm not, because you work with a lot of people like that, you don't really get fazed. But see, when you get somebody who comes out from your past, somebody you never thought you would meet, like Jim Montgomery, that was a big thrill. That was a big thrill for me. To be people. I remember phoning my wife and telling her, She was like, who is he? He's Jim Montgomery. So, yeah, you just kind of stumble into people. I can't really think, though, if I've met. Not really. Kind of. Billy Connolly, maybe.
Wait,
Billy Connolly.
You met Billy Connolly?
Billy Connolly, because when I worked at Celtic, I worked the match day. And he came to a lot of games. And again, they always say, don't meet your heroes, right? But you want your hero to be like you want him to be. And he was just Billy Connolly. I mean, why would I be surprised at that? He was funny, he was charming. He must have been sick of people coming up to him,
Yeah.
But I'd taken somebody up to meet him. But before I do that, I said, like, excuse me, would you mind meeting? Oh no, come in. No, I just thought, you'll do for me. You deal with people the right way. You get a right. I mean, Billy Connolly is so tied in with the whole Celtic thing. That's his club, and he's unashamed about it. And yet, I meet Rangers supporters all the time, and they're like, "Oh, the big kid, what a guy, what a funny guy,"
Yeah.
So it's always endearing when you meet people up the chain like that, and they're actually the way you would want them to be. Because I've met a few people in the past that surprise me that you get no time for them. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
I'm not naming names on that for sure, but I quite arrogant in a way that you wouldn't really want to be around them. You know?
I mean, Rod Stewart goes to Celtic a lot as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, I met him as well. Met him with his son, actually. Again, of course he walks about with an aura about him because he's a rock star, and he looks like a rock star, even now he's 74 or something,
Yeah.
My pal actually plays in a band that supported him all through his summer tour last year.
Yeah.
And he says he's a great guy. It's like meeting a guy down the pub. He really is like that, and I was quite glad about that because I did meet him as well at Celtic Park, and again he was just a decent kind of guy.
Yeah.
So guys like that, you like to know the bigger up the tree they are, the nicer they are, because it's not always the way.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you wouldn't probably notice that they're actually celebrities. You'd probably like if you didn't know them.
The guy I'd really like to meet, I think I'd really like to meet Paul McCartney. Now, because I'd like to meet Ringo as well, because I think he'd be a laugh. But again, somebody from out with, because I think he comes across a pretty down to earth guy. He's earning something like £25,000 a minute or something, But he strikes you as somebody who, at his core, it's still about his music. 60 years on, this is what he wants to do, and I think he'd be quite a decent guy to sit down and have a beer with,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it does seem like quite an interesting thing, especially meeting a person that you don't know is a celebrity and then figuring out what they've done, what interesting things they've been through and stuff.
Yeah, I think the thing for me now is anytime, the likes of my wife will have something on the television and it's got a celebrity in front of it, and I have no idea who these people are, and I think that's probably maybe because of my age, because I don't watch as much television and I'm not that bothered really. But I'm not really. I don't really know who celebrities are now. So if one walked in the door, a lot of the time you wouldn't know who they were. For me, anyway.
Yeah. Unless you were like really snobby and stuff, then you'd probably recollect.
I don't know about that. I mean, maybe I'm quite snobby. I remember I went to see Bob Hope. You know who he is, So he came over in 1994. He hadn't played Glasgow since the 50s. And he only came over for two reasons. One, it was the anniversary of the D-Day landings. So he was over for that. And also, he would only play Glasgow if he was allowed to stay down at Turnberry and play the course down there. And that's exactly what he did. And I wanted to go and see him because Bob Hope was a god to me. I loved his films. I just thought he was, the best. And it was one of those gigs, guys, where, I looked at the price of the tickets. Nobody would go with me. I had to go myself, right? Which was fine. but the tickets were basically about 20, 25 quid. But there was 45 quid back when 45 quid was 45 quid. And for 45 quid, you thought to yourself, well, I know what's going to happen here. I'll buy the 25 quid one and I'll look and see if another 20 quid I could be down there, you know? And I spent the 45 quid on it, right? And I was about 10 feet away from him when he came on the stage. And that was like the most amazing experience. He was 91. And he came out on stage. As soon as he came out, everybody just stood up. And he was 91 and he was good. But I mean, you know, I remember after it, there were people saying, oh, it's so sad to see him like that. I felt like saying, shut up. You've just been in the same room and breathed the same air as Bob Hope. I could die happy, you know? And actually, when I came out, I got into my car, it was at the concert hall in Glasgow. I drove around and I got into the motorway. There was this black Rolls Royce with the windows tint, and it obviously was going to go to Ayrshire. So I was driving alongside, and I you know, stupid, I'm on a motorway. I looked over, and there's Bob Hope sitting in his car, 10 feet away from me. And I wanted to roll down the window and shoot something, you know. It was ridiculous. I was like, it was just, for me, you know, to have something like that. So there you go, guys. That's something I've not thought about in about 25 years. And you've got that out of me with your skillful interview techniques.
I mean, well, yeah, that was something good. But like, what type of like commentating have you done? Like, did you have a lot of like fears or first time fears, or did you find it really enjoyable and was like prepared?
Well, again, that was something that I didn't know I'd be doing. I did it at Celtic because things changed up there, and the guy I was working for said, you're probably going to have to do commentary. So what they did to me was they gave me, myself and a cameraman, went out with the youth team, and we'd go to all these places they were playing, and I would just do commentary. So I learned how to do it. And then what they would do, they would take that and they'd give it to the coaches. Yeah. And one of the coaches phoned me up one day and said, this is brilliant. I said, how? He said, because see, watching a match with somebody talking through it is so much better than just watching it without knowing, you know. So that's how I kind of learned to do it. And then I started doing it for Celtic. And that took me to places like Sweden, Kazakhstan, all over, really. Iceland. I went to Iceland with them as well. And I really, really enjoyed it. And then when I left Celtic, I got a phone call one day from Radio 4th in Edinburgh, and they were looking for a commentator. So that was a year of my life where I went round Hibernian, Hearts, Falkirk, Wraith Rovers, all these places. And you're learning, the more commentary you do, it's like everything else, the better you get at it, you know. Again, I like to do a lot of research. That was my thing. Research the teams that are playing, so you've got your facts right. But I'm not the kind of guy that obsesses about facts. Yeah. Because I think that the important thing is to try and make people enjoy the commentary and enjoy the game. Yeah. And I saw some real games that you just, it would have been hard to breathe life into them. Yeah. But at the same time, you've got to make it sound as if that you're enjoying it. You know, you can't say Cowdenbeath against Alloa was the UEFA Champions League final, but you've got to make it sound as if, and it's all enjoyable. And it's the same, obviously, doing it since we've been doing it with Morton, with Big Andy, the two of us, and we've got a real, I want to say a double act, but it's not really an act because it's just quite natural. Or we kind of know each other, what we're going to do. I'm the lead. I tell people what's happening. Andy analyses it, but he'll throw in expressions from the old days. And I mean, people send me messages all the time. Oh, see when Andy said this, see when Andy said that, and you thought, this is what commentary is all about. Engage with people, you know, make them enjoy what they're experiencing by watching and listening to what you're doing. You know, and I really, that year I did it for Radio 4th, I would say professionally was one of my happiest years ever, because I really, really enjoyed doing the commentary. It's great.
100%. So with every one of our guests, we're trying to play a few little games. So we have a would you rather and a true or false, if you would like to.
I don't know, guys, you've interrogated me very much as it is, but yeah, a little crack. What do you want to do, true or false, or what's the...
We just do both of them.
Want to play Fortnite? You need to teach me how to do that.
Oh no,
I'm
that's not
playing.
happening.
No.
Right, okay. So let's start with the would you rather. Would you rather live without Elvis or live without Celtic?
I couldn't live without Elvis. I couldn't live without.
So you could live without Celtic?
I could probably live without Celtic football, but I can't. I couldn't live without hearing Elvis Presley's voice singing. No, that'd be too much to ask.
I mean, yeah, fair enough. Would you rather, if you could only do one of them, would you rather have done PR or commentating? If you can only do one of them.
Commentating.
Mm.
Yeah, commentating. Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying PR, but commentating allows you to be more your own self, your own personality, and I like that.
Would you rather have Celtic win a game against Rangers or have Morton win a game against Celtic?
Oh! Gonna get me hung. Well, I mean, like, you know, Celtic was always my team, you know. So it's one of those things. I had two grandfathers, right? One was from Ireland, Celtic daft. You get brought up with that, right? But my other grandfather was from Greenock, and he was Morton daft, right? And I used to go to all the Morton games with him as well. So on the one hand, you had the family connection of supporting Celtic, and then there was my wee granda, all on his own in my family, the only Morton supporter. And we used to go all the time. And I still think about it now, where I would stand in the halfway line, 3 steps up. That's where my granda was. I look at it all the time, every time I'm around that area, and I always think of my grandfather and how delighted he would have been that I was doing this for Morton, because he would turn around and say to the rest of my family, "Yeah, you can stick it. At the end of the day, he's come to us, you know." But I've always, you know, people know me. They know I'm a Celtic supporter. That's always the way it was. But Morton was always very big to me because of that family connection, and because, frankly, I grew up in an area where it was easier to go up to Capello and watch the genius of Andy Ritchie. I mean, honestly, guys, he was so good that it was worth paying the money just to be in alone to watch that guy, you know. So, and I've seen it all. I worked at Celtic the night Morton put them at the cup, and you know, on the one hand you were like, wow, and then I thought to myself, nah, do you know what? That's not the worst thing in the world, you know. Just it was having the thought that my grandfather would absolutely love that and just love what I'm doing now, because he knows that I was, you know, that I was always kind of Celtic, and then there was a lot of Morton with me as well, and I don't have any, I don't see any dubiety in that, really, you know. I mean, West Ham's my other team. I'm passionate about West Ham because I grew up watching their great sides play as well. So I don't know how I'd answer that question, guys, to be quite honest.
That's fair.
But that's the truth of it all.
So if you could write a book, well, I'm a Manchester United fan, and if you could do one, would you rather write a book for Celtic or like a big club like Man United, like Premier League sort of club?
So you're telling me that Celtic's not a big club?
I mean, well, I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I mean, like national wise, because
Yeah, I mean, I suppose your ambition's always to work at higher levels, you know. And I've done a lot of Celtic stuff, so yeah, the chance to write something about Manchester United. But to be honest, guys, I'm probably more comfortable writing about people. That would be my thing. So I'd be much more comfortable writing that than writing about a club, because people are people, you know, they're flesh and blood. They've got lives to lead, and that makes them more interesting.
Yeah,
the history of clubs are great. I mean, I love reading back on the history of all the clubs, really. I mean, some of the history we look at with, you know, the likes of West Ham, for example, you know. I've got a calendar. Got my West Ham calendar here, you know. It's all old guys, you know, and I like, this is what I like. I like, it's not just about what's happening in the here and now. It's about the history, which I always enjoy. I'd rather read about stuff like that than write about it, to be honest, I think. Whereas when it comes to individuals, I'm much more happy writing about an individual person.
So you have someone to talk about rather than just like a company?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's more my my wheelhouse, if you like. It's a people thing rather than just a big club, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. We have some true or false questions now. So, Ranger have won 3 more Scottish League championships than Celtic have. Is that true or false?
That's
Bear
true.
in mind, that is true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. So true or false, in the Premier League right now, Liverpool are top of the league.
Oh, that's certainly false.
Yeah, so it's false.
Hey, Man City are at the top.
I know, and I'm not happy about that, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Right, so Ross County have lost 7-0 to Celtic previously. True or false?
7-0.
7.
No, I don't think that's false.
That is false. But they did, in fact, lose 6-0.
They did, didn't they? Yeah.
2019. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it was 7-0 though.
So, true or false, Kevin Hart won the MTV Comedic Genius Award in 2015.
No idea. True.
You're nailing these, I don't understand. That's a Callum true.
I don't even know who Kevin Hart is, but there you go.
You don't know who Kevin Hart is?
It's a choice of 50-50.
Oh, wait.
He's
You don't know who Kevin Hart
He's
is?
huge.
He's in movies with, like, The Rock and stuff. Big guy. Actor. Comedian.
Right. No a clue.
Okay.
Who's The Rock?
Wait, are you kidding?
No.
Please tell me you're kidding.
He's not kidding. He's not kidding.
Huh?
Do you know who Dwayne Johnson is?
Wrestler.
That's
Yeah, he's a wrestler, right?
He's an
Wait,
actor
Is
too.
The Rock is who Dwayne Johnson is. That's his wrestling name. But people go through it like that.
I know his brother, Dumbarton, but outside of that, I don't really know much more about it.
Okay.
I don't know who Kevin Hart is.
Well then, so in a 2014 interview, you stated that Kenny Dalglish was your footballing hero.
Oh
Is
God,
is that still the case?
Oh yeah. Dalglish. Well, you see, to me, it's all about guys that you saw. You know, there's no point in me talking about likes of Pele because I didn't really see him play.
Yeah.
Or I did see Maradona, of course, but no, Dalglish was everything in Scottish football. I remember I watched a documentary about Liverpool one night, and the former captain, Emlyn Hughes, was talking about Liverpool and Kevin Keegan and Ken Dalglish. And they asked him the eternal question that everybody wanted to know at Liverpool: who was better, Keegan or Dalglish? And Emlyn Hughes said the second most important player that ever kicked a ball for Liverpool was Kevin Keegan. He said, and the first, by a country mile, was Ken Dalglish. That's how good Ken Dalglish was. Brilliant player. You would have to been around in that era to really understand just how good he was, you know. I mean, you guys have probably get your heroes now, you know.
Yeah.
You grew up with Dalglish was always my hero. Such a great player. Other than the fact he wasn't a goalkeeper, you know. Whereas goalkeepers, well, Ray Clements was a big hero at Liverpool. He sadly passed away recently. But goalkeepers were always my heroes.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about the guy who embodied what I thought a footballer should be and how he should play, and Ken Dalglish, you know, every day of the week and twice on a Sunday.
Yeah, that sounds good. Being a stand-up comedian, obviously a lot of the time you've had a lot of different jokes and stuff that you've done. Is there any joke that you think was like really peaked and it was very funny, or like any ones you can tell us now?
Don't know. I hate being asked to tell jokes. I never really did jokes. I never really. There was always one. I used to always end my act at one point through a right period. Obviously, I was younger and I got away with it. And when you repeat it now, it probably doesn't sound that funny, you know. But you know, through a phase, I said, "Listen, you guys have been great. I really enjoyed being with you here tonight. I just want to share something with you because I just found out about 20 minutes before I come on stage that I'm going to be a father again." And it always everybody started clapping and cheering. And then when it died down, I would come in and say, "Right, Don't know what I'm going to tell my wife when I get home though. And that was like, always good. Glad you got it, guys. Glad you got it.
Yeah,
it was one of those. It was a total banker. I knew however well or badly the set went. See that finishing line, you know you're always going to get them.
Yeah.
But it's like all the comedians that I've admired. It was all about timing. You know, you put the line out, you let them digest it, you let them react, and then just when it's come down a wee bit, you hit them with a line. And I was always proud that never ever failed. It was always a line that paid off for me, you know.
That was fantastic.
It wouldn't now because I'm about 84, you know. But
right.
back in the day, I got away with it, you know.
Yeah, fair enough. Out of doing stuff like that, and then even if it went wrong, you can finish with that last line. I guess it sort of reassures yourself that you might have done a good job, and you've done well.
Yeah. Your best laugh's always your last laugh, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, as a stand-up comedian, again, still talking about it, who is your favourite comedian?
Well, it's Bob Hope. It was Bob Hope.
Yeah.
I worked one night with a guy called Andy Parsons, who you might have heard of. He was quite big in the sort of early part of the 21st century. And Andy was from London, I think.
Yeah.
And I always admired people that had a certain style, right? My style was very physical. I couldn't stand still with a microphone and just talk. I had to move around, I had to engage with people. Probably a nervous thing, but that's the way I was. This guy stood rooted to the spot for 25 minutes, right? With a microphone held there. And all he did was he panned around the audience the whole time. And he was doing these lines and they were hilarious. People were just dying in front of him. So you're like the best ever. You know, I did the first night Kevin Bridges did. I worked at I compared it actually.
Yeah.
And he was only 18. And he came on and he was raw and he was good. I didn't think the material was that great, but then he was only 18.
Yeah.
But he did the most crucial thing ever. He engaged with the audience. The people instantly took to him. He looked funny for a start. I always thought Kevin had a kind of funny face.
Yeah.
He really, really engaged with him. And he was, as I say, the material I didn't think was that great at the time, but to be fair, he was only 18. But there was just that contact with the audience that the best have, you know. But Andy Parsons that night, I really, really admired him because he was doing something I couldn't do. You know, he was getting bigger laughs than I was getting for a start. But I couldn't do that rooted to the spot thing. Because if it doesn't get off, what would you do? You know, so.
There's some comedians I absolutely hate, like, what's his name? Is it Lee Evans? Is that his name?
Lee Evans is I wasn't a fan. I thought his comedy was all physical. And, you know, that wasn't my thing. I'm not saying, I mean, listen, it's not my taste, you know. Everyone's got their own particular taste. I liked guys with good lines, good delivery, good with the punters. These were the guys that I liked, and that's why guys like Bob Hope and all that all my heroes are all dead. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, like personally, I think if I was just stuck to the spot speaking for 25 minutes, like doing nothing apart from just panning around, I wouldn't be as like funny personally. I've not that big a fan of like comedian shows where you just stood there speaking to the audience.
Yeah.
But if there's a few that are very memorable and very funny, then I'll think it's a really good thing.
Yeah, I mean, we've all got different things that make us laugh.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen a lot of people. Comedy took off. It exploded. All of a sudden, there were like thousands of comedians. I mean, anytime I turn on the television, or there's so and so doing a program. He goes around Portugal on a bike or something. And I'm like, who's that? And so he's a comedian. And I mean, I'm not in the scene anymore. I kind of stopped doing stand-up after about 10 years because I was finding I didn't have the time for it. So I'm not around a lot of the guys that I worked with. You would see on television and things and you know you'd worked with them. And I knew names, but it's a bit like hairdressing. When I was first 3 or 4 years of hairdressing, I could tell you every salon in town and every person that worked in it. No.
Yeah, I mean, having a person on the show that does like similar things to us, I know a podcast, involves a lot of talking and stuff like having a TV interview and stuff like that. Is there anything we could have done better on the podcast? Any advice you could give us, stuff like that?
Well, first of all, feel to prepare. That's the first thing I would say, right? That's so important. Not really, guys. No, I think it's the quality of your work, the professionalism here, the relaxed nature of what you do are all the basic ingredients of what I think you need to be successful at what you're going to do. I wouldn't be surprised to find you two guys hosting a zoo radio show in about 10 years' time on one of the multi-channels that are out there, because the two of you seem very, very good together and very relaxed together. You don't cut across each other all the time. You don't, but you're not coming across there as if you get a whole list of questions that you're just ticking off as I go along, because that's not how you roll. So the only advice I would give you, such as I could, guys, is keep at it, because the more you do it, the better you get. And that's the maxim. Keep yourself interested. Keep yourselves interested in things. If your heart's not in it, don't bother doing it. Bottom line.
Definitely, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, me too. Well, I think this is where we're going to leave it. Would you like to take the pleasure of doing the outro, Gerry?
Wow. Well, what did we call this again? The Cub
Cast.
The Cub Cast. Guys, what can I say? It's been an absolute privilege and a pleasure to be on the Cub Cast tonight with the redoubtable Thomas and Aaron. I've had a great time on the show. We hope you've enjoyed it too, and we hope you'll always come along to the Cub Cast and enjoy the experience.